So, good morning and a warm welcome to today's online NAHT training, Stronger at the Start, Habits to Keep You Energized Well all term. Thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us today. It's good to see we have colleagues from all settings with us, and whether you are a member of NAHT or yet to join, we hope you enjoy today's session. Just a brief word from me about housekeeping before we begin. We will, of course, be sharing today's slides with you as soon as we are able, and this course is also being recorded and we will share this too. If you would like captions, you can request this in your control panel now. Please do post your comments and questions in the chat throughout, and please be aware that all participants can see these and the screen name you have chosen today. We are delighted to welcome Gemma Scotcher as our facilitator this morning. Gemma has a background in corporate public affairs and crisis communication and leads education support's efforts to raise awareness of the pressures facing educators. Gemma works closely with teachers, school leaders, and policymakers to ensure well-being is treated as a priority, not a luxury in the education system. Thank you, Gemma, and over to you.
Oh, thank you very much for that very, very warm welcome. It's really, really nice to be here. And forgive me if I'm a little bit hoarse. I was just telling Donna that we can't believe that Christmas is over and we're back at it. And of course, I got hit with the throat virus that was going around in my Christmas break. And I'm fine. I feel absolutely normal again, but my voice is just a little bit rattly. So bear with me today. And I hope none of you spent your Christmas breaks fused to the sofa as I did. That's not the most entertaining way to do it. But it's great to have you here. And I really do appreciate you sharing your time with me, because I know it is incredibly valuable and limited. So I'm really hoping that it will be a useful session for you today. We are going to be talking about some burnout prevention habits, that you can be thinking about at the start of term and, hold in mind as you go throughout it. That's me. We've done the bio. We can move on from that. So I'll just start by telling you that, I'm from education support. I hope that some of you have heard of us. Some of you may not have. We have a very close relationship with the NAHT, which is fab, and why we're here today. So we are the UK's only charity that is focused on the mental health and well-being of everybody working in the education sector. So, that's you guys as leaders, that's the teams that you lead, that's your support staff, your TAs, everybody. And we support the college sector as well. And we have a range of different services. We have employee assistance programs. We have a free at point of use helpline where you can talk to a mental health counsellor. We also provide professional supervision for leaders as well. 6 fully funded sessions funded by the DFE. All of this stuff you can find on our website. I do invite you to go and have a look. And when you go on there, you'll have a pop-up which will say, pop your email in and stay in touch. And I invite you to do that. We have loads of incredible free resources, loads of brilliant independent research on what is going on in the sector at the moment. And we host webinars ourselves as well. So if you want to, stay abreast of all of that great content for you and for your teams, please do stay in touch. But of course, I have to prove my mettle in this session first. So you might want to hold fire and see what I'm all about. This is another thing to say. For those of you in the audience who are NAHT members, we do actually have a partnership with the NAHT where we have a dedicated helpline for NAHT members, and this is the number. So note it down if you're a member. If you are not a member, you can just go on our website and grab our normal helpline number, and that is, available for everybody. So just to flag that up, NAHT members, that you do have a dedicated route to our mental health counsellors due to your membership of the NAHT. So a little word about how we think about well-being, because it's a little bit of a risky subject in some ways, isn't it? There's a lot to be skeptical about, and there are lots of different ways to look at it. And I think the reason that we're really keen to emphasise our approach is that we really want to make it clear that what we will not ever be doing is coming and talking to a room full of educators and saying, oh, you can just box breathe your way out of the staff retention crisis, or you can yoga your way out of burnout. All these box breathing and yoga, fabulous things. And if they work for you, please do them. But it is much more complex than that. And I know that you guys understand that. So we come at well-being from three levels. So we look at the system. You guys know every single day, there are things affecting your well-being that come from the wider policy, political, social, and cultural environment. That is undeniable. And there is no, magical pill that will fix that in the immediate term. It's a slow and difficult game, right? That's why part of my role is the lobbying and influencing at the level that we do, because we know that in order to think about your well-being, we have to think about the system and the social factors that are affecting it. That's obviously a slow game. It takes time. It's not always successful, but that's the reason that we do a lot of research and we do lobbying. So we come at it from that level. We also look at it at a workplace level. It's undeniable that, the cultures in which our organizations operate, with which our organizations operate, affect our own well-being and the well-being of our people. So we work with decision makers in schools as well to think about the cultures that they're creating and how cultures can be looked at through the lens of well-being, which ultimately has a benefit for staff retention. So we look at it from that level as well. And there's a lot of good work happening in the sector, but it's not consistent. So that's an important level to work at. But then we also work with individuals, and that's where some of those tactics I've already mentioned come in. We work with individuals to help people working in the sector think about how they might protect and prioritize the well-being. And that looks different for everybody. I think that's a really important underlying assumption for us as an organization when it comes to thinking about individual well-being. We won't ever come along with a kind of set formula that you need to follow. We'll always assume that you are all different and you all need different things. Different things will deplete you, different things will nourish you. And the invitation is always to think about who you are and what works for you. And that's exactly what we'll be focusing on in this session and how it will be framed. So that's just a little overview of how we think about well-being and the different factors that play into it, and how it's a complicated picture, actually. So here's a few examples of the research that we do. It's a little out of date now. We've done a few things since then as well. But you may have heard of our annual flagship piece of research, which is the Teacher Wellbeing Index. The latest one just came out in November. We provide an overview of how everyone's doing in the sector every year. And one of the reports that we put out after COVID, as you can see there, is called Teaching the New Reality. And it's about putting some evidence and some numbers behind what we know is happening in the sector in terms of the complete expansion of your roles. The idea that you only look at teaching and learning is obviously no longer the case, if it ever was. But since COVID, that has expanded so much. And some of the important evidence points I'm just going to share, because I think it's really important for the content that we're going to be talking about. So that, the work that you do is so much more varied than it ever was before as leaders. You're doing the teaching and learning and the planning and the curriculum and the inspection planning and all of that. But there's this huge amount of emotional, pastoral, behavioural and safeguarding stuff that always existed before. Of course it did. But it's just demanding ever more of you and your leadership's time. And it makes the job way more complex, doesn't it? And it means that you have to wear lots of different hats and shift gears multiple times in a day like never before. It's a really important point to hold on to as we think about some of the things we're talking about today. And on top of that, we asked educators at the time, well, okay, you're doing all of this stuff, and how about the external support? And it's clear that, you're holding a lot of this stuff without as much support from other public services as would be needed, CAMS, social services, the NHS, the support isn't there in the level that we would hope. And it's very clear, you know, we've got 66% of the educators we asked there saying that there was little or no support. So that affects how able you feel to, you know, deliver impact in some of these areas. And this has obviously had an impact on, you know, the working hours. And that's hard. We know teachers and educators and leaders are not afraid of hard graft. So this slide is not about saying, oh, you know, we want to do less, but it's about saying, you know, these changes are materially affecting, you know, the structures of your week and your experiences of work. And I don't want to dwell on this too much, but you know, a high percentage of leaders saying all of these additional responsibilities, the way in which the job has expanded, it is having a material impact on our mental health and well-being and the way that we are feeling at work. And I think that point about support from services is integral there, because I think so many of you care so deeply about the work that you do that if you feel frustrated or like you can't get the young people the support that they need, I think that is a very real source of distress and frustration. So that's a little bit sad and overwhelming, and apologies for that. The reason I share it is just to really land in, you know, this is the stuff that we're thinking about when we think about your well-being. And so I try to, you know, think, okay, what does burnout prevention look like in that context? Because it's a really big and complicated context. And I sat down before this session and thought, okay, what are 3 practical things that we can address in a session? And here we are. So what we're going to look at today in that context is 3 things: prioritizing our energy levels. And what I mean by that is thinking about just being in relationship with them. If we are not, you know, conscious and intentional about our relationship with our personal energy, it can very quickly get depleted when we work in high purpose, high challenge environments. And funnily enough, in TES just today, there was an article about educators and professional energy management, comparing you to sort of professional athletes, which I thought was incredibly interesting. So something about energy levels that we're going to think about today. We're also going to talk about noticing, which I know sounds incredibly basic, but it's fundamental, because when we're really busy and on the treadmill constantly, it's incredibly easy to get very disconnected from what's going on for us internally. It's the first thing that goes, especially in high purpose work where we really, really care. So we're going to think about noticing. And then, because my philosophical guru is Mufasa from The Lion King, we are going to remember who we are. Some of you will remember that line when Mufasa comes through the clouds in The Lion King and says to Simba, remember who you are. It's really, really important, because yes, we care about the work. We're really, really purpose driven. But you're also humans. You're also people with families, with interests, with hobbies, with passions, with likes and dislikes, and, you know, flesh and bone. So it's really, really important that we get in contact with that person as well, because that is the source of, you know, replenishment and joy, and sustainable energy that will help us through busy periods. So those are my 3 pillars that we're going to be thinking about, but there's a few bits of content in here today. So first of all, we're going to lean into the awkwardness together. And I'm just going to say, let's take just, even if it's 30 seconds, because I know it's so hard to do this in a busy day. I'm just going to sit and invite you to just notice how you're doing. Just notice how you are showing up in this session today. You may feel fantastic. You may feel less than fantastic. However it is welcome. But I just want to give you that opportunity to get in touch with that. Okay, I think that's 30 seconds. And I hope that none of you could hear the ferocious noise coming from my neighbour's dogs through the wall. Um, but thank you. Thank you for doing that. And hopefully we can just, you know, be with that, be with however you're feeling as we go through the content. And before I move into the meat of the content of the session, I will also say just a bit about my setup on this end. I've got my slides up, obviously, and I've just got a very thin strip of people on one side. I'm going to see if I can see more of you. And obviously, there's quite a few of you in the session, which is fab, but I can't see all of you. So I do encourage an interactive session. If anything pops up, feel free, raise a hand. Do use the little yellow one if you want, because then I can see you. And just feel free to share a reflection or a question or a challenge or anything. Please do feel free to do that. There are some moments as we go through the content where we'll pause and we'll reflect together. So we'll basically look at some content and then we'll pause and say, what did we make of that? What landed there? What feels challenging about that? And I'll encourage us to just share a little bit in the plenary as we do that. So feel free, make it your own session. I totally get it if you are, you know, not able to interact today. That's completely okay. But if you are able to, please do. And one last invitation is I know you guys. I know some of you are multitasking behind your off cameras, and I get it. You're really, really busy. But if you can, just give yourself a little bit of time and make this time for you and for your well-being. You know, see if you can, because that's what this session's all about. It is about just carving out some focus on you guys as leaders, because you know we know that you're always thinking about everybody else all the time. So this really is an opportunity to just sink into that and focus on yourself. But at the same time, you're adults, so please do what works for you. Okie doke. So we've noticed, and we've noticed that the dogs next door are very loud. Here we go. I'm going to jump in to some stuff on our personal energy. I love this slide. I really, really do. I think and I use it, I think about it a lot myself. So if we are able to think about our sort of personal energy reserves as, you know, a rechargeable battery, you know, those funny ones that went in a white thing in the wall in the 90s, or your phone battery, you know, whatever works. I think it's really important to remember that our energy stores, the amount of energy that we've got to give, it can so easily be drained, can't it? And when I ask educators to tell me what drains them, they you know have very, very quick responses. And as you can see on the right here, you know, long hours, conflicts, data drops, recruitment stress, I'm told, is, you know, absolutely always on that list for leaders as well. Worrying about your community, worrying about children and young people, worrying about inspections, long hours, no breaks, all of that stuff. You know, you get it. You know all that stuff off the top of your head, the stuff that really drains you. But when I ask educators, okay, we know what is taking energy. What gives you energy? You know, what in your life replenishes you? That oftentimes people struggle a little bit more with that. Some people don't. Some people are really quick off the mark and can answer. But more often than not, people do struggle to answer that question. So I've got some really, you know, good professional examples on the left. You know, those light bulb moments, classroom moments, great colleagues, you know, doing stuff that you love, your families and friends, and getting enough sleep. You know, those are quite straightforward ones. But if we think a little bit more personally, like what for you, and actually I'm going to invite some of you, see if some of you are brave enough to share, like, is there anything that any of you do that really, you know, gives you your energy back? Is that a straightforward and easy question to answer, or is that a challenge? Feel free to just shout out.
Hobby,
Oh,
sorry, I go fly fishing. So
oh, great. Where do you do that?
Well, I used to do it at Carsington Water, but they've the company that runs it have just gone bankrupt. So I'm currently looking for other venues. So
Yeah, fab. I live quite near the Test.
right, yeah,
So I do, that's fab. I love it. Yeah. So you go fly fishing and the quiet of nature, the dopamine of catching a really good fish.
yeah, and the concentration it takes more than other because the casting is quite difficult. So it takes concentration to do it, but it's not. There's no, if you mess up the cast, it just collapses in a heap and you untangle it. There's no
Mm,
consequences to it, but it
yeah,
requires you to focus on what you're doing rather than
yeah,
thinking about everything else.
yeah. That mindful act
Hmm,
takes your mind away from work and you're
absolutely.
focused just on doing this task in front of you. There's a
Hmm.
lot of there's a lot of wisdom in that, isn't there? And that's a great example. you know, um, good on you. Does anyone else have one?
Yeah, in a similar way, I do running, and again, you can only think about running when you're running. However, when we're doing a project on mental health with Mind at the moment with all of our staff and our
Yeah,
parents, and for a lot of people and myself, often it's the small things. It's not the going
yeah,
to, to run a marathon. It's actually, I don't know, having that coffee on your way to work in the morning. It's
mm,
those little pleasures, and I think I've been ahead for
yeah,
nearly 10 years now, and
yeah,
I'm sort of embarrassed to admit I've bought a coffee on the way to work every single day, but actually it's sort of what gets me up and keeps
yeah.
me happy and things like that. And it is the little things through the day that
Yes.
really do make that difference rather than the bigger things for us.
Oh my gosh, you've hit the nail on the head. I think and I'm going to literally land this point in the slides, is little moments matter hugely.
Like the
You know,
coffee.
yes, I mean, I'm a coffee addict as well. So I really do relate. And in that moment when you are buying that coffee, you are choosing something for you. You're going, oh, and I know exactly how I like it, and I know exactly where I like to go to get it, and I'm just gonna enjoy it and have it. And that is just choosing yourself in that moment, even if it's really small. And that is very replenishing in a really small way. And I love that it's daily. And don't beat yourself up about the cost because sometimes in life you just have to. Yeah. And I mean, this part of the conversation is always one of my most enjoyable parts of running these sessions. I love hearing what people do to just give themselves a little boost or to really carve out dedicated time to just be present as themselves, as people. It's so important. But why does it matter? It matters because of this all the things that we've said, being able to take your brain away from the work and just be yourself, taking a small moment to do something for you. It sounds incredibly mundane, but there is so much importance in those sort of mundane, grounded acts where we give ourselves something. And I think this is particularly important in education because if you think about the way that the academic term is structured, you've got your terms, your half terms, your terms, and your big break. That is absolutely geared towards a structure of sprint, collapse, intensity in the term time, where your energy is just, you're in fifth gear for all of it. And then you just sort of collapse into half term, collapse into the Christmas holidays or whatever it is. That is incredibly hard on the body and the mind. Incredibly hard. And I think I also feel a little bit like you're getting what's the word I'm looking for? You're getting shortchanged somehow in that. Because how do you really get the most out of those breaks, which are meant to be one of the perks of the job, apparently, when you're collapsing into them and you're spending most of them exhausted, right? And so I think the invitation here is not to say, oh, you've got to go and have, a big expensive Thai spa break every holiday in order to manage your energy. That is absolutely not what we're saying. It's how do you fit in small but regular moments of replenishment into the term, so that by the time you get to half term or the holiday, there's just a little bit more gas in the tank, so that you can get the most of it, and you're not spending it entirely in recovery mode in the break. You're actually able to have enough energy to do some stuff that feeds you. You know, you can show up to the family gathering a bit more present and a bit more energized, and then get a little bit more from the people you love. Or, you know, you've got a little bit of energy to go and do those things that you love doing, whether it's fly fishing or snooker or whatever it is. I've heard so many great examples over the years. So I think this sets the tone for me, this slide, around small moments throughout the term, and it not necessarily needing to be really, really big. Oh, sorry, I've gone back. I didn't mean to do any of that. Really, really big gestures. I'm just going to pause there and see if anyone else wants to reflect anything, because I've seen a couple of cameras go on. And does anyone else want to share anything when we're thinking about those small wins throughout term? And how does that resonate? Go on, John.
Hi, Gemma. It's not a personal thing, but yesterday I went and visited another head teacher at a local school.
Mm-hmm.
And we've no agenda. I just walked around, we had a chat, and it was kind of nice to know that he's facing all the same challenges as I am. He's not a head teacher I know particularly well, but there's a group of about 10 of us, and we all said we would make an effort to visit each other's schools once a half term. We'd do a visit and a host. And it just really helps. I went straight from home. I was there for 8:45, and I stayed till 11, and I came back to school and you're like, so it wasn't revolutionary, but I think it was something I used to do a lot more before COVID. I think maybe it's not something we've picked up again. And I think sometimes we think, oh, it's just us, it's just our school, we're the ones. And we know it isn't, but it's just nice to see someone else's reality. And you're talking to someone at that level with it. I think even in your own school as the head, sometimes it can be a bit lonely. We've got great deputies, and I'm not saying we haven't, but I just found that really useful. And he's coming to see me after half term, so and we'll move on. And I just found it really useful.
What a fantastic thing to share. There's so much that comes up for me there, but the first thing is, of course, connection. Human connection is so important, whatever form that takes. But there's something very specific about that professional connection, and that your situation is entirely understood by this person that you're then also making time to reflect with. And when you're on the treadmill doing, reflection can be one of the first things that goes out the window, because it requires a bit of a pause. But you're able to kind of get up on the balcony and look at the whole picture together. There's something incredibly reassuring about that, isn't there? So that is so good. And the other thing that springs to mind for me is one of the very most useful things about these sessions. It's not necessarily what I've got to say, because I'm not doing the job, but it is often the comments I get from leaders is, it's just so useful to hear what everybody else is doing. So thank you for sharing that, and I hope it inspires some of the leaders to pick up that idea, because I think it is so important. And the other thing I will say is, it's not revolutionary. None of this stuff is revolutionary at all, and it's about the reality being that you're so busy that a lot of the kind of basic small gestures that reconnect you to yourself, reconnect you to other people, goes out the window. So it's about creating a space today to remind ourselves of some of those sort of basic things that we can do. So thank you so much for that, John. I think that's brilliant. Does anyone else want to share anything before I go on to the next slide? No, I will carry on then. So that is fab. Thank you. I really enjoyed enjoyed hearing all that. And just a small point to say that we do have some science around taking breaks. We're going to get into another slide in a second around rest, but just around those professional breaks, and those, even if they're really small, we do know from the research that although it can be really, really hard to take a break because we're on the treadmill and it's incredibly busy and it's hard to give ourselves permission, I like to share this because if you are ever having that kind of mental gymnastics moment of, oh no, I need a break, I'm knackered, but at the same time, like, I just need to keep going, I need to get these things done. We do know that taking those breaks really supports us cognitively. It supports our performance. It supports our ability to do our jobs well. You know, it can help us connect with new ideas, see things from a new perspective and have fresh ideas. It helps learning. It helps the stuff we're trying to learn sink into our brains, which is so important. It helps us kind of metabolize new knowledge. And most importantly, perhaps, you know, it really increases our interest and enjoyment in tasks and the work that we're doing, which, of course, you know, supports performance, supports the quality of the work that we're doing. So in that long run, if you're struggling to give yourself permission for that, remember the science, because actually it is about doing a better job more sustainably. And I do know that with leaders, the way in to persuasion tends to be about how to do the, you know, doing the job well rather than personal benefits quite often. Okay, so I'm going to start this slide with a question and ask you all, who here has had a really, really long, big sleep and then still woken up exhausted? Yeah, everybody always puts their hands up here. I'm so sorry, I haven't looked at the chat. Oh, there's loads of really good stuff in here. Oh yeah, sorry. Heavy metal music, sorry, and driving fast. There's loads of really good stuff in the chat that I've seen. Sorry, forgive me. Thank you so much for sharing in the chat. I'm really sorry I've missed it until now. I've got too many boxes open, but I've got it open now, so we're all good. If you want to put in the chat, I can see it. So I'm going to ask again, who has had a really, really big sleep and still woken up absolutely exhausted? Yes. Hands raised. Yes is in the chat, I'm sure will come through. It's a thing, isn't it? And why is that so important? It's important to think about because I think culturally, socially, yes, I've got thumbs up in the chat. This is a thing. What we do is we associate rest with sleep, right? Which makes sense because sleep is rest. But the really important thing to remember is it's not the only type of, it's really not the only type of rest. And I think socially we've equated the two, but it is much more complex than that because not all types of exertion can be cured with sleep. And so look at this slide, you know, it outlines 7 different types of rest that are associated with 7 different ways that we can exert ourselves. And the first thing I'm going to say is you can see in the bottom right there that this framework was devised by a really brilliant thinker called Dr. Saundra Dalton Smith. And you can, you know, note her name and you can find her TEDx talk. And her TED Talk's brilliant, and she will address all of this in a way that is, you know, much better articulated than I can articulate it. But so go and watch that. But I think when I look at this slide, I really do think about educators and the specifics. If you think about some of that data that I shared at the beginning, you know, around all the different types of work that you're doing and all the different ways in which you have to switch gears and modes a million times a day, this is incredibly relevant, isn't it? Because when you think about on the far left there, physical exertion and physical rest, that is so straightforward, isn't it? You know, you run a marathon, like someone just said, and you're physically exhausted, so you physically rest your body. It's pretty straightforward. But here's a question, you know, what is mental exertion, and therefore then what is mental rest? You know, does that bring anything up for anyone here? It's really hard. Oh, I've got something here. Yeah. Oh, are we set jigsaw puzzles, easy ones for mental rest? Oh, that's actually genius. Yes, because what is that mental rest? Mental exertion. That mental exertion that you're doing every day is literally that cognitive load that you are carrying around all of the micro decisions that you have to take. And as leaders, you are making decisions constantly, aren't you? 56 decisions in a day, you know. And you're having to think and prepare for different contexts. You know, you have to put a different hat on talking to a disgruntled parent than to talking to a pupil who's struggling, you know, talking to a staff member who needs you know, some support around a project or whatever. You know, the way in which we have to make a million decisions, assess a situation and adapt to it, that is all cognitive exertion constantly, and you're doing so much of it. So the mental rest actually comes from that space where you don't need to take a decision. You don't need to process any new information, or at least not any difficult information that your brain struggles with. It's a really, you know, it's a really easy place where the brain can cognitively put a few things down. So Liz's example of easy jigsaw puzzles is a really, really good example of how you can mentally rest. And Ed's example on the riverbank of you know, just putting the work away and focusing on tying your line, you know, that is mental rest. And when do we give ourselves a space and time for our brain to be in that mode? That's a question for you guys to, you know, feel free to share. But if you want to take that question away with you, you can, because it's an important one. Got some stuff in the chat here. Fiona, I used to think rest only meant sleeping. So mental rest from school is anything that helps you switch off, rest from the pace of school. Exactly. I count anything creative, social, or exercise now as rest. And that in itself actually helps me feel better and psychologically more rested. Fiona, you could come and work for us at Education Support, because that is exactly the message. And I think at the nub of this is rest doesn't always mean stillness. It can. There are times when it absolutely should, but sometimes rest is that, you know, you might be physically active, like doing a bit of exercise, but you're mentally rested. So that is so spot on. Time away from the screen helps my cognitive exhaustion. Absolutely, Karen. I'm exactly the same. And for Alexandra, it's time alone. Yes, and we will come on to that because that's really important. Time alone, sometimes you need that social and emotional break, actually. So in fact, that leads me on to it. I'm going to jump ahead just to emotional exertion and emotional rest. Again, another very complex one, but really, really relevant to the complexity of the work that you do in schools, I think. So what does it mean to be emotionally exhausted? You know, and what, in the context of your roles, what does it mean to be emotionally working, ultimately? Oh, Elena said, we learn to know ourselves. I need music to help me switch off. I realised how much recently when I tried to go to sleep without a gentle music fix beforehand, and my brain and my head were too noisy to sleep. Music helps me block out the noise of all other tensions. Yeah, really nice. There's something magic that music does, doesn't it? Where it gets into your nervous system and calms it down. Or activates it, you know, if you like more activating music. But yeah, there's something magic about it, isn't there? Scientific as well, but sometimes I like to think of things as magic instead. So Karen has said, emotional work, it makes me numb, so I can't really be there for others emotionally. And Elaine says, anyone with ADHD understands this deeply. Absolutely, yeah. So you're doing a lot of work in schools where the nub of your role is to hold the needs of other people first, whether that is your team, you know, and thinking, right, okay, this team member is really stressed out. How do I get the best out of them in this situation? Because yes, they're stressed, but there's also this stuff that needs to get done. So you're emotionally putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about how to emotionally get the best out of them, regardless of how you're feeling or what you want or need in that moment. Or you might be faced with a really, I mean, obviously safeguarding springs to mind here. you know, and the weight of some of the information you'll have to receive, you know, the distressing nature of some of that, some of those cases, and the fact that even though you're hearing distressing information and perhaps having a very reasonable emotional response to it internally, you're not able to give that space. You just have to get the job done in that moment. So your emotional response has to be, you know, maybe punted to the side or pushed down or delayed. You know, that's a lot of work internally to really push through and get the job done, even though something's distressing. Or you might go into a situation, you know, that is a conflict. I know there's a lot of confrontations that are happening. And although you may be secretly thinking, this person's incredibly unreasonable as as a human individual, your professional head has to go, how do I get the most out of this person to ensure their needs are met, regardless of how you're feeling? All of that is emotional work. And all of that can make you come away, as Karen says, feeling really numb, because the work you have to do to disconnect from your own feelings to get the job done can leave you with a numbed out feeling, can't it? So sorry, again, that's a little bit of a bleak picture. But then the question becomes, if the putting of others' needs first persistently is emotional work, what does emotional rest then become? What is that? How does that show up in life to give yourself emotional rest and replenishment? It's really hard. Alexandra, a walk in nature. Yeah.
We pay for supervision because this is a bit that me and my other DSLs are really bad at. And we don't, I had some time off work quite a while ago now, but because you don't process it, you just hold it and think it and put it in your school pouch sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we have somebody who comes in, which we're lucky to be able to afford, because obviously we don't get any money to do this, but and kind of her role is to try and tease out of us how we're feeling about mainly the safeguarding stuff, but not just that, because otherwise I am really bad at that.
Yeah.
My other DSLs aren't great. So I'd appreciate some input from other people who've found some better ways of doing it. Save some money.
Love that invitation. Please do respond to Ed's invitation if you have thoughts. And I will just say a quick thing, which is, I mean, that supervision is such a great answer, because, and actually someone here Claire has said, saying no and defining boundaries. And the thing that's in common with both of those things is emotional rest is about saying, I'm making some room for my emotional reality now, you know, because what you're doing when you're firefighting all of these emotionally loaded situations is you're putting your emotional reality on the back burner, and that builds up inside, doesn't it? So the safe contexts and spaces where you can make your emotional reality matter and make it be present is a really big part of working to prevent burnout, because all of those suppressed emotional responses can absolutely contribute to burnout creeping up on you faster, because there's no room for you to have feelings. And this may be supervision. That's a great, cracking context. Or ringing our helpline, all of these formal mental health and well-being or professional support mechanisms. But equally, they can also take a more sort of a more mundane presentation, which is literally carving out some time at home to prioritize what you want and need, and not having to apologize for that. But again, that's none of these things are easy necessarily. But the permission granting is so important. Claire, I have supervision myself. DHT and AHT are trained supervisors, and it's difficult getting other staff to access it for their well-being. Yeah, it is. It's a journey, and I think a really big part of part of it is that talking about those benefits. And actually, Ed, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Sorry. Like, what do you think is what is the main benefit for you of having that supervision? Like, what does it give you?
It makes me think about how stuff is impacting on me. And it makes me stop and have a conversation. It's also given the other DSLs a bit more confidence. I mean, to sort of say to me when I'm not on platform, emotionally, about something as well. So, because we're the three of us with the counsellor are having quite a very honest conversation. They're a bit more willing to push me and go, you don't seem yourself today, you don't seem right today. You have to be here. What could you do instead, and have those conversations. But yeah, I just bottled stuff up and cracked on with stuff as I think most heads do. And then when something happened in my private life that had parallels with things that we'd experienced in work, it all builds together and becomes really messy. So
Oh, yeah. Yes. And then we get to a place where we're not really aware of our emotions, but we're acting them out. And that's when we're not really in control of them and they affect others and all of that. And you're describing a context in which you're trying to sort of be aware of your feelings and be aware of how you're presenting, but also allowing yourself to feel what's necessary, good on you. And we've got some other comments about supervision in the chat, which is really great. And a shout out for education support supervision. So that's fab. And then Karen has said, someone recently came to see me with a problem at home and they actually asked if I was in a place to receive the information emotionally before they offloaded. And this really made me think. Yeah. I mean, Karen, what did it make you think?
Well, it was just the first time anyone has ever done that. Usually people just come in and they offload and you carry that baggage, don't you, with you. And so it was a bit like, am I in an emotional place? I had to really think. And I did obviously say, yes, of course. But afterwards, it did make me think, that no one really does that. So that was a really strange experience. And it did make me think about when I go home and I offload and I don't think about the days that people in my household have had and how it affects them. So it was only recent and it has really made me think about it and actually putting that out to people about not everyone is in a place to receive what you've got to share. And sometimes they need to be able to say, actually, I'm not, but I can kind of guide you somewhere else, or you can't take everything on, can you? Everyone else's problems as well as your own.
And we are in leadership roles and we do have responsibilities, but that doesn't mean that we're no longer human. I've got let's see if I can just before we go on. Oh, blimey, sorry. Before we have a short break, let's see if I can. Here we go. Here's my slide. We are leaders, but we are not robots. We do still have needs, and there is no weakness in that. And in fact, being in relationship with those needs can help us do our jobs better and for longer, which is, really what we're looking for. Francesca, please go for it.
Yeah, just echoing what Karen said there. We've got some fairly new leaders, in leadership role, and we've been really encouraging the staff to remember that we are human beings as well as leaders. And so, one of the staff a while ago sent a WhatsApp to one of the leaders and so on, and we sat down with them and said, think about how you would have received this, and so on. So really getting that narrative out, and it really is having an impact.
Well, good on you, because I think one of the things that we talk about when we talk about cultures and cultures around well-being is that this is not about making a soft and fluffy culture, where nobody ever feels uncomfortable and, all of that stuff. A culture that supports well-being is based on being relational, and that comes with responsibilities for everybody. There are obviously, you know, ways in which the leadership can promote safety, psychological and emotional and otherwise, and make it, you know, feel like a good and meaningful place to work, you know, and all of that stuff staff deserve, and it should be in place. But they also have responsibilities for how they show up in the culture too. And sometimes being clear about those expectations and role modeling what those responsibilities look like can feel hard to be on the receiving end of, because it's a reality check. But it's important, isn't it? None of this is about soft fluffiness. So good for you. I think that's important, isn't it? To say, you know, we are leaders, but we are also human. John, this is so good. Ex-colleague of mine, now retired, advised me once, if you never say no, what value is your yes? So great.
Yeah, that was the head teacher of the school where I'm at now. She was head of school before, and it was her dad who used to be a diplomat. Used to say that to her: if you're a yes person all the time and you never say no, you just get taken for granted, and
it's assumed, isn't it? Oh, they'll do it. Yeah. And Karen's written that down. Fab. Okay. I love it. Right. I mean, that was all really good. I'm going to give us, because we're sort of at that halfway point, I'm going to say, should we just take a 5-minute comfort break? And then we shall return for the last half. Fab. Lovely. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a good little break there. So I'm going to start the second half, and I've predictably overrun in the first half, so it's going to be a bit of a whistle stop for the second bit until 11. But that's usually my way. So I'm going to start with a question, which is, can anyone tell me if what the difference between stress and stressors is? It's a hard one. Anyone? Any takers? Oh, here we go. We've got something in the chat here. We've got Angela saying stressors are the triggers. Indeed. Elaine, first one receive, second one causes. Yeah. Did someone else say something?
Yeah, I was just saying, it's like a cause and effect. Yeah,
exactly. And stressors cannot be controlled as much as stress. Oh, exactly. So I'm just going to I'm going to talk first. Yeah, that's exactly right. So stressors are the things in the world that cause stress, and it's exactly right to say, you know, we cannot. That is the thing that we cannot control. There will always be stressors, things that cause stress, and stress in itself is a reaction in our bodies. It's a physiological reaction. It's an emotional. It feels emotional as well. But it's primarily a physiological response in our bodies. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit about stress and how we understand it, and how we can be in relationship with it. And I want to caveat it by saying I'm absolutely not suggesting that any of this is necessarily easy or pleasant. I don't want you to think I'm saying, oh, you know, just suck it up and handle the stress. That is not the purpose of this sort of narrative I'm about to share. It's really about being in relationship with the stress so that we can help ourselves come out the other side of stress. Because as you'll see, from what I'm about to show you, you know, stress has an impact on us, and it becomes, it's a very natural and normal thing to experience, and very reasonable. But it's when we get stuck in a perpetual state of stress that never eases that the problems arise. So yes, stressors, i.e. things that cause stress, they're not going anywhere. They are absolutely always going to be, you know, that especially in the roles that you do, you're always going to encounter stressors. But thinking about being in relationship with our stress responses can help us in the long run, especially when it comes to thinking about burnout prevention. because so much of burnout is related to a kind of persistent presence of stress response. So I'm going to just whiz through my animation because I don't like it. There we go. So you may have seen this before, you know, that this notion that our bodies respond to stress and we have a reaction commonly sort of described as fight, flight, or freeze. There are other responses, of course, that we understand, like fawn and other things. But the reason I'm sharing this is because it really demonstrates brilliantly that so often we can be wandering around in our professional life and we're feeling normal, we're feeling happy. Our nervous system is telling ourselves, you know, we're safe, we're normal, everything's fine, you know, and we're feeling in relationship with our body. You know, our breathing is steady, our brain is functioning, we're thinking clearly. And then something can occur. We can be in our offices, you know, and we might be faced with a challenging interpersonal interaction or an email with some bad news, or anything that brings us that kind of, is it familiar if I say that sort of spike of panic, that rising feeling of, oh God, what's this? You know, it's so natural, isn't it? And that is a stressor happening, and it's signaling to our brain. There's a center in our brain, the amygdala, where it's saying there's a danger. There's a danger, guys, and the body just goes into a response. Now, the thing that's so interesting about that is that when we evolved, those dangers that set off that response were meaningfully life-threatening. You know, we might have literally been going into war with another, you know, with another tribe, or we might have been chased by a predator, or we might have seen, you know, food that we foraged, you know, has a horrible toxic mold on it or something, you know, and our brain has gone, danger, danger, don't go near this. For your literal physical survival, don't go near it. And what happens is the amygdala sounds the alarm. That's your sort of brain's emotional and survival and panic center, signals a threat, and then your body goes into a nervous system response, which is a stress response, right? And that, as I say, that has been such a clever thing that our bodies can do, because it has meant that we have survived as a species. But the thing that is now different is that the things that signal the danger are no longer literally life-threatening. They are in very many ways uncomfortable, unsettling, and annoying in our day-to-day life. But in our day-to-day life, they're not usually life-threatening. Now, of course, we do always, you know, people in life encounter life-threatening situations and their body responds accordingly, as I've just described. But in the case of what I'm going to talk about, I'm talking about us being at work and, you know, it not actually being life-threatening. But it's really important to remember that your body is responding to a hard situation that isn't life-threatening as if it were life-threatening. And that's really a useful thing to hold, because I can notice that. And so that's happened. And then you go into the yellow part of the cycle, which is, yes, your response, your fight, flight, freeze. I'm wondering, is anyone willing to share with me, you know, what do you feel? What are the sensations that come up when that happens for you?
I tend to go into sorting mode.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, when we're talking about not really urgent stuff, I just practically just start to deal with stuff. So I nearly sliced through my finger over Christmas, slipped down the stairs, and my wedding ring gouged out. So I had like the Yeah, went right through the skin. I'm not going to describe it for those who are squeamish, but I'm there like telling my wife how to wrap it up and what to do and how to sort it and those kind
Problem
of things.
solving.
Yeah, because that's kind of my default setting. I have to try and solve it.
I see. Oh, yeah. So you were in, and that is such a classic actually for leaders, is to go into problem solving mode. You're great at that, all of you. What are but when you're in that stress, that sort of rising panic of, oh God, danger has happened, like what are the physical sensations? Like how does that show up in the body? Heavy chest, Fiona says. Yeah, really, like there's something sat here. God. Any others?
Butterflies in the stomach because the blood's gone away from the digestive system. And
yes, that's it. And I love that you know the science of that as well. Exactly. Butterflies in the stomach, because your blood, I'm going to explain this in a moment, your blood has gone elsewhere in the body to help you run away. Because again, if we think about those life-threatening reasons that this response evolved, actually the logical response originally was to run away. So the adrenaline sends all of the blood to your limbs to get you running away. But if your threat is in your school office, it's not logical or permitted for you to physically run away. So you're left with these physical sensations. And there's some great ones in the chat here. Karen, feeling sick in the stomach, skin tingling. Absolutely. That is cortisol and adrenaline, isn't it? A temper. Yes, and we're going to talk about that and why that's the case. Emotional reactions that come out. Panic mode, making quick, not always right decisions. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about what that is. Yeah. So there's a whole raft of it. And other people talk about warm hands, sweaty palms. I get really sweaty palms, shortness of breath, dizzy head. These are all physical sensations where your body is telling you you are in your flavor of stress response. And it will look different for all of you. It will look different for all of your colleagues. Some of you will be outward facing, the fight and flight, the running or the fighting your way out of it. That can look like big emotional reactions or just literally leaving the room. Some of you will be very external facing. Some of you will be very internal with it. Some people withdraw in stress or freeze in stress. And it's very common that often people marry people with the opposite stress response. I'm very outward. My partner's like a little turtle, he goes in. So it's always interesting to see, how do other people show up when they are in their stress mode? It's good to be aware of that for our teams. But that's another point. Elaine says, I get more noise. I'm wondering what you mean. If you're willing to say more, I think maybe that might be about mental chatter. But can you say a bit more about that, Elaine? I go into Duracell bunny mode. Yeah, that's it's kind of fight, isn't it? I'm just going through the motions fast. Okay, I mean these are all great examples and fantastic that you can notice these sensations and what is coming up for you when you're in stress mode. Go on, Elaine.
What I was meaning by more noise, sometimes you it's a phrase people say, it's hit me like a sledgehammer. You feel that noise, the sound of a sledgehammer. And things that I'm afraid of, I get noises, they make sounds at me. I know that sounds completely mad, but I know a lot of other people feel that. And it's the sound of things, different things that cause you that panic.
Yeah.
To me, panic comes as a sound. That sounds mad. But I get more noise the more stressed I am, and I have to do things to block that noise out.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have never heard that, and it's so interesting. I'm absolutely going to be Googling that after we chatted, because it's...
I heard on the radio, I heard a famous guy who was struggling with ADHD that had been diagnosed at the age of 50-something, and he said he was medicated, and it felt like he went into an aircraft hangar and it was going, hello, 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 hello. And he didn't like it because everything was quiet. All the noise had gone. And I think, it really, I'm in my 60s, horrifically. And I never knew that was part of what I'd been dealing with all my life. I mean, I know, and you deal with it. You don't think twice about it. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, but I thought I was just a bit odd.
But actually, you've encountered many people that have experienced the same thing.
Yeah. So I think the noise thing, you know, when you get noises and your noise increases, I know I need to calm and go do something else, or go out of the room, go to a different room. I just need to put everything down, you know, and probably go and talk to children if it's not the children that's causing the stress.
Yeah. Because that is, you're describing, that is so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're describing such a heightened state of stimulation there, aren't you? Where, everything's noisy. Oh, wow. Really, really interesting.
I mean, this is my daily occurrence. I have noise all of the time.
You have noise all the time,
you know, it's not an issue, but I think when you're stressed, that's the bit that increases. So that's what I was meaning by that.
Yeah, that heightens to a point of it being unbearable when you're in stress. Yeah. Okay. So, wow, lots of different ways in which stress might, and that's a really important thing to say, isn't it? Is that stress will have all of these things that we've described. And if you're neurodivergent, whatever your traits look like, those traits will absolutely be heightened as well. So there's a lot going on when we're stressed, isn't there? And what is happening is that, just checking my time. So yeah, we talked about the amygdala. The amygdala goes off, it sounds the alarm in the body, and in a really simplistic fashion, there's more to it than this, but I'll give you a quick overview. You know, cortisol is the main stress hormone that you'll all have heard of, which is your body's sort of alarm bell. You know, the amygdala sounds the alarm and the cortisol says, threat, there's something, you know, stand to attention, be activated, it's time to run. All of that adrenaline goes out into your limbs because, again, your system is saying it's time to get out of Dodge, basically, or to fake your own death, you know. So there's this really big physiological response that's happening. And you are sat there, perhaps, in your office behind your desk, or maybe you're stood in front of a classroom, or maybe you're going down the corridor, or whatever it is that you're doing at school. And you're not really able to physically respond to those hormones in your system in the way that we are meant to, which is to run. So we are left with these hormones churning through our system, creating a very, very physical response. But actually there isn't some, in this context of, you know, we're assuming there isn't something that is actually life-threatening happening to us. But what we do need to do is get our system, remind our system. You can see we move into this light blue section of the cycle. What we want to do is tell our systems that we're safe so that those hormones can come down. The reason being, because although these stress hormones have a very clever evolutionary function and they've kept us alive, our systems are also not designed to have them present for really long periods. And if those hormones and that response is a perpetual state of being, a constant, then that's when you start looking at really long-term health effects. Musculoskeletal challenges, heart problems, blood pressure problems, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. I've said musculoskeletal. There's all manner of ways in which physically we are damaging our physical health if those hormones are present all of the time. So the aim is to bring those hormones back down and tell our nervous system that we are in a state of safety. Well, how might we do this becomes the question. And it's not necessarily straightforward, but it is important. And I will just touch on one thing, which is that another thing that occurs when we are in that state of stress, and someone's alluded to this already, is our prefrontal cortex, where we do all of our really best thinking. When we're in a state of stress, it literally goes offline. That thinking, rational part of the brain goes offline, and that emotional center that the amygdala is part of becomes the dominant part of the brain that's running the show. So this is where, when you've hinted at making panicked, not necessarily good decisions, that isn't imagined. That's a physiological fact, because the way that the brain is prioritizing different zones when we're in stress really means that we are making less good decisions. So really attending to our stress, thinking about whether we're in a state of stress and thinking about how to bring those stress hormones down helps us in terms of our health and in terms of allowing us to be healthier for longer and physically more able to do our jobs for longer, because we're not shortening, you know, our career length or our life or anything like that because we're having health effects. But in addition to that, when we're in the job, it allows us to do a much, much better job because we're more able to do high quality thinking. Because when we're in that state of stress, we're literally not doing our best type of thinking. So that is the case for it. And I do know it's not easy. So please, I really am not saying, I'll just go and do it tomorrow. It's super easy. It is about trying, getting it wrong and trying again. But I am going to just pause and say, ask rather. So having thought about some of the things that have come up today, you know, what comes to mind when I say we need to get into a state of safety? You know, what do you think might assist with that? What do I mean by that? Any takers? Oh, here we go. I've got something in the chat. I think Francesca's going to say something. Elaine says, Saskia just does a lot of work on managing anxieties and stress in children and staff and can work with individuals or schools or a trust. She has a great book recommendation. The Dose Effect. Yes. Oh, my God. So I'm going to talk about some of those hormones that are in dose, D-O-S-E. Yes, exactly. Francesca, were you going to say something?
I mean, it might not be answering your question as such, but just what I found useful is just I'm really privileged that I've got a really good senior team around me, and they're able to sort of, you know, we take things off each other if and when we know that actually something is so. Like for one example, during the pandemic, God, you know, it was a long time ago. There was a certain team from outside of the school that was almost making me feel that, you know, constant sickness because there was lots of battles going on and things like that. And a really kind deputy who said, actually, for the next month, so do you want me to be the key liaison with them? I can sort of see it with that clearer mind and you know, whatever else. Not that I didn't have a clear mind, but I was just, you know, in that zone. And that was so powerful for me, just to take that away and then, you know, see it more objectively. So I think connecting with those leaders around you can sort of take some of those triggers. And then I would do the same for them if, you know, take that to-do list that's causing them that, you know, that panic almost.
I mean, that is brilliant because ultimately, like, none of this is a solo effort. I mean, we're talking about being individuals, being in awareness of our own sort of stress responses and having a relationship with our own emotional states. But it's also a community effort, especially in schools. And if you've got, if you're in a good place and you've got a bit more flex today, you know, how can you help a colleague who's at 20%, you know, and vice versa? That's such an important part of this. It's not a solo effort. You sort of naturally have to support each other. I love that. And Karen said writing things down. So I think supports of colleagues is essential. So that book title, The Dose Effect. Now, dose stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So the great news about all these blooming stress hormones is, yes, we have stress hormones that can make us feel bad. And put ourselves under stress, but we also have in our nervous systems feel-good hormones as well. Dopamine is the reward hormone. You'll have heard of, it's a neurotransmitter, but dopamine is the sense of reward. It can make us feel purposeful, driven, and satisfied. Oxytocin, the love hormone, it makes us feel socially connected. It gives us that warm, fuzzy feeling when we're around the dinner table and we're feeling connected to people that we care about. That lowers that sense of stress so much. Serotonin, we've heard of. It's that feel good neurotransmitter that actually helps all of the other neurotransmitters sort of transport around the brain. So we really need serotonin. It helps us feel good, and you can get it from feeling the sun on your face and all of that stuff. And endorphins are the body's natural painkillers. So if we have experienced some good stress, whether it's going for a run or other kinds of exercise, the reason that we feel good afterwards is because we've completed the stress cycle, and we have received some of the body's natural painkillers, and so we feel good afterwards. So the reason that we want to be in relationship with this cycle and make sure that it's completed, and we're completing it by getting back to safety, is because when we get back to safety, we're nearly always releasing some of those feel-good hormones that are bringing down the presence of the stress hormones, getting our system back into a stable stasis, and the support that gives us in the long term, in terms of our long-term health and in terms of our ability to do our job, is huge. So the experiment is, how can we notice when we are in a state of stress and intentionally give ourselves something that brings us back to safety, releases feel-good hormones, and rebalances our system? That is the homework, effectively, because it's incredibly easy to be on the treadmill, on the really, really busy treadmill, and just keep going, even though we're in this heightened state of stress. It's so incredibly easy to do that. And that's why I have notice on my list of 3 things. Because if you don't notice, that's when you keep ploughing on in a state of stress. And what this slide here shows is that the things that release those feel-good hormones, they are not revolutionary, to use someone else's phrases. They are freely available to us, and they are evidence-based, and they help the body return to a more natural state, or not natural, but a more calm state of equilibrium, and they release those feel-good hormones. And so some of it is sort of, we've heard it before, haven't we? Physical activity. We know that releases stress and releases serotonin and endorphins. And that doesn't have to be a marathon. That can just be gentle movement that is available to us. Breathing exercises. Yes, they are not a panacea, but they can help us to release serotonin and to reset our nervous system. Positive social interaction is, that is where you're going to get your oxytocin and you're going to bring your stress levels down. But this is positive social interaction, not social interaction that feels overwhelming or like a duty, So there's a balance to be struck there, isn't there? Especially if we're more under emotional demands or introverted. Laughter as well is a really good source of feel-good hormones, including endorphins, along with affection, and crying is a release, and creative expression. And this is going to look different for all of you, as we've already hit on, because you've all shared such different hobbies and things that make you feel good. This is not about saying, follow this formulaic tick box. It's about saying, notice for yourself what is effective, because it will look different for all of you. Elena said, mindful colouring, making mini models with Play-Doh, etc. All fab. I mean, that's creativity, isn't it? And that's going to give you a good dose of dopamine. Creativity is so good for dopamine and a sense of satisfaction, because you've created something and you've done it on your own terms and you've expressed yourself. It's also that emotional rest, because you're just expressing yourself in that moment. You're not tending to anybody else. So the homework really is to think, how can I notice when I'm in a stress response, and what do I need to bring myself back round to safety so I can close the loop and not leave those stress hormones running in the long term, because that is what runs you into burnout and health problems. I'm going to skip that one. Blimey. Sorry. And another thing I will say is that it's very easy to sort of think, I have to do this and I have to get it right tomorrow. It's oftentimes not that simple. I know that so many people in education are real perfectionists. this is an area where there isn't really any room for perfectionism. There's just trying, noticing, trying, getting it wrong, trying again, a swing and a miss, try again, get back on the riverbank next week, see if you feel different. So please, I don't want, although I have used the word homework, it's tongue in cheek. I don't want you to feel like I've given you a list of things you have to go away and execute perfectly tomorrow. This is all about an invitation to explore what works, but to hold that it is rooted in the evidence of what we know around burnout and maintaining a long and satisfying career. Because the work that you do is so important. You make such a difference to so many lives every single day. And we know that we need you in the roles that you do. It's hard to stay in a long and fulfilling career these days in education. And we're hoping at Education Support, by going out and helping people, helping people to think about the ways that they can stay well in the long run, that we can slowly start to, make that career in education long, sustainable and fulfilling again, because it is brilliant and purposeful work that you do. And we thank you for it. And we hope that you can stay well. And Angela in the chat has just shared a fantastic quote, which is, perfect is the enemy of the good. And I think that couldn't end on anything better, because that's exactly the energy I hope you can bring to this. And I hope that you can find a way of, finding what works for you, because that's what it's all about. So I think I'm at time, very close to time, as always. I think you will get a little survey pop up to feedback on the session. But otherwise, I just, again, want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your engagement. It's been so brilliant hearing from you all. And I hope there's something that's useful in there for you. And anything that doesn't land, leave it, forget it, and just focus on what's helpful, because we're all different. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I would just like to say thank you for joining us today. It was such an interactive group, which is great to see. It just makes the course flow better, and it's better all round. So thank you so much for all your feedback and your comments. I hope we answered all your questions today. If not, then please do send us an email at events@naht.org.uk, and I'll pop that in the chat now, just for your reference. So all I will say is thank you again. Thank you, Gemma, for your experience and your supportiveness today. It was a very, very good session. And I'd like to say thank you again. Goodbye.